All right, here's some more practice with problems. When you get the grid in response type questions, remember you can leave your answers as fractions or decimals. So if you look at this first problem, and all you have to do is solve for y, but we have these fractions, the first thing I would do, if you don't like fractions, is change the fractions to decimals. So 1 over 2 is 0.5, and 3 over 5 is 0.6. Once you do that, then you can go through and distribute. So 3 times 0.5 is 1.5. And then we'll get all the like terms on the same side. Oops, I didn't multiply the y by 3, so that should be minus 3y. So we'll add 3y to both sides. And I'm going to subtract 0.6 from both sides. So we get 0.9 equals 18y. Since the 18 is times by the y, we'll divide by 18. And 0.9 divided by 18 is 0.05. If you did the whole problem with fractions, you'd get 1 over 20, and either answer would be acceptable. In order to get credit, you have to bubble in the answers. Even if you write the 0.05, it's not going to be scored. So bubble in the point, the 0, and the 5. We have another problem that's just solving an equation. So my advice is to distribute first. So you'll get negative 6x, and then negative 2 times negative 2.4 is positive 4.8. Set it equal to the other side. Negative 3 times negative 3x is negative 9x. Negative 3 times negative 2.4 is positive 7.2. So we'll get all the like terms on one side. I'm going to add 9x to both sides, so I have 3x. I'll subtract 4.8 from both sides, so 3x equals 2.4. Divide by 3, and x equals 0.8. So this answer is 0.8, or fill in the decimal, fill in the 8. This problem wants us to solve the system. So we have 3 choices. We can do graphing, substitution, or elimination. Graphing is when both your equations are probably y equals. Substitution is when you have either a y equals or an x equals. And elimination is when the x's and y's and plain numbers are all lined up vertically. We don't really have any of those situations. And to get this one and this one, the elimination, it'd take quite a few steps. So my advice, since this x right here is almost all by itself, is to divide everything here by negative 2, and then substitute what we get in for x in the bottom equation. So when we divide everything by negative 2, we'll get x equals negative 2y minus 3. So we're going to take all of that in parentheses, and we're going to plug it in right there for x. So I'm going to rewrite the beginning of the equation, and while I do that, to save time, I'm going to go ahead and distribute. So it'll be 4y plus 6. Next, I'll copy the 3. And for the x, I'm going to put everything that's inside my parentheses, the negative 2y minus 3. Then I'll copy the minus 5. So nothing changes on this side yet because we need to distribute over here. So that'll be negative 6y minus 9 minus 5. I'm going to add 6y to both sides. So I get 10y plus 6 equals negative 9 minus 5 is negative 14. Next, let's get rid of the 6. So 10y equals negative 20. Divide by 10, and y equals negative 2. So I know this question isn't multiple choice, and you would not have a grid-in answer with negative 2 as part of an answer. So I believe this type of a question would be a multiple choice. So we have the y, we need to find x. So we're going to take this y, and my advice is to plug it in right there. That way we'll be able to figure out what x is. So x will equal -2 times y, which is also -2, minus 3. So -2 times -2 is +4, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So x equals 1, and the final answer here, if it was a multiple choice, would be 1, -2. Don't worry about grading it in, because you wouldn't be asked to do something like that. When answering the next couple questions, we're going to need to remember characteristics of parallel and perpendicular lines. Parallel lines have the same slopes, so same number for m. Perpendicular slopes have the opposite reciprocal slopes. Opposite sign, so flip it from positive to negative or vice versa. And reciprocal means you flip the fraction. So, in order to figure out how many solutions a system has, like we need to do in this next example, you have to remember that two lines cross once, like that, if they have different slopes, and they probably have different y-intercepts. The two lines are the exact same, so the pink line and the blue line are one on top of the other, if they have the same m and the same y-intercept. There's no solution to the system if your two lines are parallel. And remember, parallel lines have the same slopes, same m, but different y-intercepts. So when we look at these two equations, in order to figure out if they have the same slopes and the same y-intercepts, my advice is to put those equations in slope-intercept form. Then we'll immediately be able to tell the m, we'll be able to tell the b, and we'll be able to make our decision. So, the first equation, we have to get rid of the 6x first to the other side. So it'll be 2y equals -6x plus 3. One more step, divide everything by 2, and we have y equals -3x plus 1.5, or 3 over 2. -6 divided by 2 is -3. So the first equation's done. We now know that the slope is -3 and the y-intercept is 1.5. So let's quick solve the next one for y. That's only one step to do that. So the second equation is y equals -3x plus 2. So you can see that slope is also -3 and it has a different y-intercept. So same slopes, but not the exact same line, means that the lines are parallel and that there is no solution to that system. If two systems, or if two equations have infinitely many solutions, it means that they're the exact same equation. But equations might not look the same at first glance. They might be multiplied by a scale factor, which means all the numbers are the same, but they are just increased or decreased based on a number they're multiplied by. So all we need to do is figure out what A is. Well, in order to figure out what A is, it's related somehow to the 7. It got multiplied by something and became a -7. So let's look at the other numbers. This 3 got multiplied by something and became a -15. Well, what do you multiply 3 by to get -15? 3 times what is -15? Well, -5 is the answer to that. So if you multiply by -5 to go from the top equation to the bottom equation, it must have meant that you took whatever A was and multiplied it by -5, and it equaled -7. So to solve that for A, we'll just divide it by -5, and when we simplify it, we have A equals +7 over 5. So we can put the 7, the slash, and the 5, and then bubble that in. If you choose to type that in the calculator and get the decimal for that, the decimal would be 1.4. That's also acceptable. This problem gives us a line, They want to know which equation is perpendicular to this line. So we need to figure out the slope, because whatever the slope of this line is, the perpendicular slope is going to be the opposite reciprocal. So let's figure out the slope of this line. Here's a good point. Here's another good point. The distance between those points is down 2 for the rise and to the right 1 for the run, so positive 1. So the current slope is -2 over 1, down 2, forward 1. To take the opposite reciprocal, we'll make it positive, and we're going to flip it, so it's 1 on top of 2. So that's the slope we're looking for in the new line. This is the slope in front of the x. It's not that one. It's not that one. It's this one. There's the positive 1/2 in front of the x for the slope. This last problem, we have voters registering for a registration drive. The number of voters is the total V. The letter T stands for the number of days after the drive began. And the equation is V equals 3450 plus 65T. All we have to do is interpret the number 65. Well, the number 65 is right next to the T. So it means 65 is M, or the slope. 65 is the slope. Slopes are rates. We get slopes by multiplying them by one of the variables, in this case days. So if we look through these choices, the number of voters registered at the beginning is the 3450. The plain number is your starting number. The number of voters registered at the end would be what you get for your total. That'd be what V is, so it's not that. Total number of voters registered during the drive would be every day. It would be just that part. But the number of voters registered each day, every day, it looks like 65 voters registered. So in this case, D is the correct answer. That keyword each day, that should help you realize that that's the one that gets multiplied by the variable.